Well, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Of course, I'm here in Perth. It's been beautiful weather and it's actually going to be 33 degrees. So, what's it like where you are? That would be the question. Um, but if it's evening, you might not even know what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. But anyway, before I get into the content today, because we'll be talking about the crystal chiastolite, which is just a stunning crystal that I first came across probably nearly 25 years ago. I was given a piece actually by a prospector when I was living in a little town in Western Australia called Kalgoorlie. But either way, before I start talking about that, I just want to remind people that I do have a tendency to go down the rabbit warren. I can distract myself, even though I have got notes. I do a little bit of a semi transcript. I like to be relatively, what is the word, organic when I deliver these videos. And this is because I've got such a thing against AI these days that basically I just want to be as real as possible. Anyway, bearing that in mind, I do put timing chapters into the description so that if something is not to your interest, if you want to jump ahead and check something out, you can just go from place to place. You don't have to sit there and listen to me drone at you about X and Y. You can just find the content that you're interested in. And also, I invite you to put up questions if you've got questions that I might be able to answer. If you've had your own experiences, I invite you to put those up. If you're familiar with Chiastolite, for example, let me know. Let us know where you actually bought it from, because Chiastolite in particular, and this invitation is there for all the videos I put up. But with chiastolite in particular, I have noticed, and we'll talk about that in the mineral stuff, that it differs widely from area to area where it's sourced. And so it'd be really interesting to hear other people's experiences and what type of chiastolite they've got. But anyway, without further ado, let's talk about it right now. So, what makes chiastolite so interesting from my perspective and so distinctive is that you see that it's actually a couple of different rocks that form together to create this cross in the center. And you can't actually see the cross. This is what I'm hoping to convey with these images, that when you look at the rock from the outside, it just looks like any old ordinary rock. It's when you actually slice through the middle of it, you see this formation where you have the lighter colored cross factor. Well, shall we say the blades? It's split in quarters, really. This particular piece that we're looking at here is very similar to what I was given, all that time ago. But anyway, it's, what can I say? Just at this point in time, before I get into the rest of the content, it's got a very long and interesting history, regardless of a person's background. You can actually research online fairly easily how it's been valued by people throughout the centuries. And the cross is the part of the crystal that makes it valuable cross-culturally, shall we say. I understand that the Native Americans used it, also the colonists in USA, which was known as New England back then, the Puritans and the Pilgrims, they valued it as well, because obviously for them it had a different symbology. Anyway, it's also been popular throughout Europe, and I would imagine anybody that comes from those earth-based traditional type cultures, which could be the Scottish people, or, back when they were into their myths and magic. So before we get into the metaphysical and the mineral type information, we'll just give a nod to the fact that it's associated with the sun signs of the Zodiac, the Libra and the Capricorn. Now, as always, I'm really not sure how they come to these conclusions that it is associated with a certain star sign. I do suspect that it has something to do with numerology, and I must put that on my to-do list to explore the numerology of the Astro charts and how they come to these conclusions. But I mean, if you know the answer to this, by all means, let me know, because it will just save me time doing the research and that kind of thing. I really, just looking at this content, which obviously I've sourced from somewhere else, I cannot see or understand why it's focused directly on these sun signs. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what your star sign is, your sun sign. If you feel drawn to a crystal, then it's the crystal for you. And particularly if you have an opportunity to hold it in your hand, it is one that you need right now, especially if you feel vibration, if you're energy aware. In the case where I was presented with the piece from the prospector, I would call that divine providence. It was given to me at a very important time of my life. Anyway, look, I think it's amazing. More recently, though, I have actually bought some online because mine, they say that crystals come into your life for a reason or a season, and sometimes it's time for them to move on to somebody else. So I'm not going to go into the story of how a lot of my crystals ended up leaving me and going somewhere else to live, shall we say. But suffice to say, I'm at that point in my life where I'm actually collecting again, and Chiastolite was right up there to have as part of my collection. So yeah, I've bought some recently. So from a metaphysical perspective, Chiastolite is often referred to, for people like me, I'll call it the fairy cross. Other people will call it the cross stone. I mean, to me, it's not that much different whether it's the fairy cross stone or just the cross stone. Anyway, the symbology of the cross is what makes this crystal revered, regardless of a person's background or religious belief, because the cross in itself is symbolic of magic, shall we say. So for Christians, obviously they will associate it with resurrection, rebirth, that kind of thing. The rebirth aspect is actually cross-cultural and cross-faiths. Either way, from a sort of generalist perspective, it does refer to the divine connection, connecting with the creator, the divine forces, cementing the connection between Mother Earth, nature, the elementals, and it represents oneness, unity, and accessing universal consciousness and enhancing the awareness. It's also associated with divine magic and miracles. Now, one thing I haven't put on the list, I may do this before I actually publish the video, is that when we talk about the cross, I think even the Vedas, I haven't read the Vedas, certain information I've looked at, but I'm pretty sure that they associate magic with north, west, east, and south. And this is the same for many, I'm umming today. Even myself, shall we say, my approach to life is that, yes, you have celestial beings, higher beings, powerful beings that are at all of these points, the polarities, if you like, and they form a protective shield, shall we say. What else? So when you talk about the fairy cross, or if a person's talking about a fairy cross, they may, instead of believing that there's angels or celestial beings or what we call light beings of the highest order at each point of the cross, they will potentially associate fairies. Now, there is another, I'm just remembering Sylvia Browne had, people don't know anything about her, she's passed away now, she was a medium, but she used to do a meditation that referred to the north, south, east, and west. But in her interpretation of the symbolism of the cross, I think it was the Father, Jesus, Mother Mary. I'm not sure if Joseph was one of them, but certainly she applied not necessarily a mainstream, but a Christian philosophy to the symbolism of the cross as well. So just a little tidbit there. I'm going to try and stick to the transcript here, because I am not a geologist. I don't make any claims to be a geologist or a gemologist. That's not my bag. I'm not into it. But I think it's important to have a certain level of understanding for when we're actually buying stuff so that we don't get ripped off. So anyway, primarily Chiastolite comes under the group heading, if you like, of, and I hope I pronounced this correct, Andalusite. Now, I have seen variations as to the hardness, the mineral hardness. I've seen some people say it's 5 to 5.5. Some others will say 6 to 6.5. And of course, when it comes to the colours, this was new information for me when I was doing my research for this video, was that it has brownish pink colours. It's black, or it's got a green cross pattern. My experience has been that it's black with the whiter cross pattern in the middle. and a bit of a grungy browny colour on the outside. I like to call that the crust. That's just me. But anyway, yes, you can see it comes in a range of colours, and we'll have a look at some images in a little while. Other tidbits are it was first mentioned that we know of in a book in 1648, but was officially recorded in 1754 by a gentleman by the name of Jose Torrubia. Hopefully my pronunciation's all right there. There's apparently only 3 active localities. Now, look, when it comes to this kind of information, I've got to say, just be aware, when we find information like this, it may actually be outdated. But what I did find is there are distributors of chiastolite that would make it a verifiable source, if you like. But currently, well, based on the information I've got, the active localities are the USA, Spain, and a place in South Australia. So maybe the piece that I got given, I would say, just being a prospector, it wasn't a mine site. He probably found it when he was fossicking. Either way, while it's considered to be fairly rare, and when we talk rare, we're always talking about an increase in price, but I will say that's conflicting, okay? Because when I bought my chiastolite very recently, it wasn't hugely expensive. But anyway, it's supposed to be rare, but it can be found all around the world. I guess the reason why it's rare is probably we're relying on the rock hounds, like the prospector that I met, to find them and actually put them on the market. And there's probably not a great deal of mines. But either way, I'm going to recommend, if you're interested in chiastolite, that you actually go to the website Mindat. You can see there that this image, which I think is particularly pretty, by the way, it's not one that I've seen in the flesh, but it comes from South Australia. Anyway, it's from the Mindat website. And when you go to their website, they actually list, and there is an enormous amount of places that you can find chiastolite, stumbling over the word. I'm a bit croaky this morning. I think it's actually because I got woken up in the middle of the night by my dear little man, my little puppy dog. So I'm feeling a bit sleep deprived. I mean, I've been awake for a while, but I think I've still got husky morning throat. Anyway, if you visit the Mindat website, this is where I've sourced all of these images. And there is many more than this, okay? This is why I recommend you look yourself, because these are the formations that I can honestly say that I wasn't aware it came in so many of them, because I'd only had the one that I came into contact with. But the one that you see on the top left, that one's from France, and that contains silicate apparently. So where we say it's Andalusite, this is my understanding. I'm open to correction. The chiastolite itself forms with these different minerals. So the ones that I showed you that I was given, I think that forms with granite, and that's from an area called Coolgardie in Western Australia. When you look at the bigger one, the Australian chiastolite, that's formed with graphite. So it's andalusite and graphite. I believe that's how it works. I've got to be honest, I cannot see how the French one actually is chiastolite, because I'm not seeing any crosses in there. I don't know where that comes from. The ones that I've bought more recently, turns out that they are from China, and this is that image on the far left as well. What we also see, though, is Spain and Portugal. Look at those ones, they're just incredible. The one in Myanmar needs a special mention, okay, because it looks yellow here, but realistically, that's where it has transparency. So on the Myanmar, which I think is Burma, the old name perhaps, that yellow part, that's a transparent type yellow. So you can hold up to the light and you can actually see through it. I mean, that to me is just magical within itself. And the awesome Spanish pieces, I mean, just take a look at them. But you can imagine, the more detailed the clearer the crosses, so this is actually not just about mineral information that I'm going to give you here, but also about buying. So the Chinese ones, for some reason, are as cheap as chips. They're not particularly expensive. Perhaps they've got huge quantities of them. I don't know. I don't believe that they are faked. I think they're the real deal. But when it comes to, let's say that Spanish one on the bottom right, I would imagine that would fetch a pretty price if you were trying to buy it. The same with the one from Myanmar, because it's so unique. The one in Portugal has got such a clear black cross on it. And then the one in Spain has got almost feathering within the cross factor as well. So I guess the rarity there is going to push the price up. So when it comes to buying, really, just, I guess the best tip that I can give you, because I think in this instance, when you look at a crystal, you've really got to look at the color, the texture, the form, the makeup. You're going to be the one that decides whether or not you want to buy this. Only because I really wouldn't be able to give you an idea of what price they might command, and I don't know that you would actually be buying chiastolite based on the weight of the crystal, because quite often they're sold just as a slice. That's what a lot of them do. And in these instances, where normally I don't like the idea of buying slices, when it comes to chiastolite, I actually think a slice is a good way to buy it, because you can get to see that cross pattern from all sides. But I would imagine the image where you've got the Spanish chiastolite sitting in a person's hand with all of those crosses within it. Now that would be the one that people who like to do magic rituals and ceremony would actually really enjoy, having that perhaps on their little altar, their table, their prayer table or whatever, because you just wouldn't be taking a slice of that. That's just too spectacular. But for the other ones, a slice would be perfectly adequate to hold. So then it just goes back to straightforward, what is the currency? What are they asking for? What's the conversion? Is it affordable? Is it something that you're prepared to pay? If you like it, then you look at, well, what is the freight cost? Because they might be selling that crystal for $3 but charging you $65 for freight, in which case it pushes you your desire, shall we say. You have to really look at then, is that a price that you're willing to pay? Yes, I think that's about all I can give you by way of buying tips. So as you can imagine, with this reference to the cross and the power of the cross, there's a lot of spiritual, metaphysical attributes for chiastolite. In fact, I would say it's primarily a spiritual type crystal. It's certainly been popular for the rituals and ceremonies when people are trying to connect with the divine energy. If people are trying to connect with Mother Earth or the nature kingdom, and just to generally ground themselves. What I haven't tested with chiastolite because of this connection is I do actually wonder. I did go to Bali many years ago and I practiced telepathy with the monkeys in the monkey jungle, if you don't mind, and the elephants and actually an orangutan, but that's beside the point. I didn't do it when I was holding chiastolite, is where I was going, but I think that it would be worth giving a try holding chiastolite as well, actually. It's recommended, if you're going to use it for ritual, that you conduct ceremonies on a full or new moon, especially if you're trying to manifest ideas into the practical. Another thing that it's associated with, or another attribute, is it's believed to help people connect to their ancestors or the ancestral wisdom, and it's said to promote astral travel and to protect a person while they're actually doing that astral traveling. It's also believed to fill the aura with light, and it's considered to be a crystal of revelations, revealing the life purpose while in a meditative state. Spiritual growth, of course, that pathway of self-discovery, shall we say, enhancing the awareness of who and what we are and the world around us, enhancing the higher universal and cosmic knowledge and wisdom. And going back to the past life stuff for a moment, it's actually believed to enhance or provide access and insight into past life memory. Now, I did mention that when you're astraling, it's believed to act as a protector. So if you were meditating and trying to astral then you would hold it. But if you think that you're astraling at night time and you're worried about feeling safe or whether or not you're protected, you could pop it under your pillow. It's recommended to use when you're doing all sorts of energy work, and at other times it's recommended if you're surrounded by a lot of negative energy and it's coming at you from all directions, you could actually wear Chiastolite as a talisman of protection, if you like. I think the primary one that's probably most interesting to all of us mere mortals is that it is said to be helpful through the death and dying process to assist in a smooth transition. And this is because, of course, it's associated with rebirth. And then the other one, of course, I say of course, because I think if you're into crystals at all, after a while, you kind of generally can tell just by looking at a crystal that it is associated with grounding. This is a very grounding and centering crystal. So if you are scattered, if you're feeling all over the shop, then this would help to regroup. So regroup is probably the best word. It will help you to regroup, to center and ground so that you're in the correct space, at least energetically, when you start that manifestation process, and to ensure that you're not just talking about what it is that you want to do, you're actually putting the steps in place to take actions and to have a practical goal, an achievable goal here on earth that helps yourself and helps others, preferably. So while there's not a vast array of physical attributes for Chiastolite, what there are pretty compelling. Now, of course, we can't assume that this is going to heal. It's not a magic wand. We've got to be practical as well when we're on the earth plane. So I wouldn't be recommending people disengage from their medical treatment people, their doctors, their experts or whatever. But you could certainly, if you're suffering from any of these conditions, wear or keep Chiastolite beside your bed. But anyway, what it is associated with is things like regulating blood pressure. If you suffer from low blood pressure, it's believed to assist with bringing it to a healthy state. When we talk about repatterning, we talk about neural pathways and nerve endings, that kind of thing. So it's supposed to help people to recover from nerve damage. That includes, this is where I go, this is a little bit of a stretch. Even I struggle with this, but if somebody's had a stroke and recovering from it, they say that this is actually recommended to recover from a stroke, especially where there is a level of paralysis involved. So these are the times I really would be interested in hearing of people's experiences. If you've got a family member or if you've had a stroke yourself and you're trying to regain muscle movement and all the rest of it, then consider using Chiastolite, especially if you can find a cheap enough bit. You can get those Chinese ones fairly cheaply, and let us know how it works for you. So it's supposed to build muscle strength as well. When we talk about addiction, we are talking about patterning of behaviours and thought patterns. And we know that there are the neural pathways, and this is why addiction is on the list as well. What I did see was that it's particularly recommended for people that are smokers as far as addictions go. That's actually up there as one of the most difficult to overcome. I know that from my training, actually, and this is going down a tangent because, as I said, I'm good at that. When it comes to addiction, they might all start as a thought, but they become physiological responses as well. And what I understand through working with people that suffer from addiction is that while it takes huge effort for them to overcome any addiction, smoking seems to be the last bastion. They generally do smoke and they find that one the hardest to get rid of. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'll put my hand up. I probably shouldn't because it's not fashionable anymore. Yes, I am a smoker, so maybe that's part of my smoker's throat or something like that, why I get hoarse. I think not, because I also have another health issue, but whatever. Anyway, each to their own. What am I going to say about that? Oh, it's recommended, moving on from the addiction aspect. It's not a subject I really want to talk about, is my smoking. Talk about rheumatism. It's supposed to be helpful there, and that's probably about getting mobile again, the physical movement. So, from an emotional perspective, it's said to promote calm and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances, because life is change, and to be able to retain peace during turbulent times, particularly turbulent, okay, or distressing times. And this is why I feel it's a good crystal for trauma, because quite often, if people have got a past traumatic experience, or they're living with PTSD or whatever, they're easily triggered. Change can really throw them out of kilter, and just basically it's not really good for them. So it's recommended for people with, say, trauma, as part of keeping them emotionally balanced and stabilized. It's said to encourage peace, positivity, positive attitudes, insight into self, like what's going on, why do you feel the way that you do, especially during difficult times. It's believed to expand personal growth and development, and to support a person to be able to find solutions to problems in creative and innovative ways. Now, the beauty of being able to get an emotional calm, to get the emotions centered and stabilized, is that once we take the emotional goggles off, we're able to see more clearly to resolve conflict as well. And we can see our thoughts are less scattered, we're able to focus, we're able to concentrate, and the decisions that we make, especially when they involve moving forward, when we're during these periods of change, it helps us to make wise decisions, or decisions that, I'm just thinking how to put this. Okay, so quite often we will make decisions and lock ourselves into a pathway that we find out down the track that we're not really that comfortable with. Well, the idea of a healthy decision is, it's not always one that we want to stick with for the rest of our life, but it is one that is going to be okay for a certain time frame. And if we change our mind, it's not a major overhaul to actually shift onto a new pathway, if that makes sense. So it enhances the adaptability, and it's believed to offer the determination and courage that we need to actually manifest our goals, to walk that pathway when we come up against a stone wall, to know when to hold on and when to let go. So what I did notice when I was doing researching on Chiastolite, and a lot of the time I've got an idea, but I want to double check just so that and see if I'm correct in what I believe, or if there's a variation with what I believe and understand to be true and what other people believe and understand to be true. So what I did see is that there's a variation from my perspective to other people's perspective when it comes to the chakras, because many people say that Chiastolite is associated with the base chakra. However, okay, from my perspective, where I see it as different is because of the divine connection, and because it unites, you may as well say, heaven and earth, if you like, if you're into that kind of terminology. We're talking about celestial connections, which is the stars, the sky, and then Mother Earth, that kind of aspect, the Gaia aspect. It brings the two together. So from my perspective, it does all of the chakras, but to be able to connect with all of the chakras, you've got to or activate them or heal on a full level. Then there is what we call the Earth Star chakra, that is about a foot beneath your actual feet. If you were standing up, so you can't see it in this image, but the Earth Star chakra is about a foot below there. And then we have what is called the Rainbow chakra, which is about a foot above our head as well. These are just guesstimates. If you're energy aware and you can feel energy, you can meditate, and you can actually open up to, if your gifts are opening up to seeing and feeling, this becomes part of your own personal growth and development. But anyway, so my belief is, yeah, okay, it works on the base chakra, but it works on all of them. And for it to, for you really to receive the benefit of it, and that is meditating or doing energy work with it, it's actually just almost like the Kundalini, to be honest. It will go from your earth chakra up your spine, energizing each chakra along the way, and then connecting to the rainbow chakra at the top above your head. So just quickly here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but basically when we talk about suitable uses, and bearing in mind that it's not a really hard crystal, So it may not be suitable for use as jewellery, although I do see online there are a lot of jewellery pieces where Chiastolite is set in silver or gold or whatever. I mean, it's certainly very pretty when it's polished up, but I would say probably the best use of Chiastolite is within the environment, say as an ornament or meditating, holding, popping under your pillow, or wearing it in a pouch on your body if you feel that you need a talisman and a bit of extra protection. Of course, if you are going to wear it, then you will need to be careful because some of them are quite soft, and if you drop them, it might break. But yeah, really use your own discretion there. So, as a messenger or an oracle, usually when I start this slide, I say, I've got bowls of crystals and I offer the bowl to people and say, put your hand in there, it's like a lucky dip. Well, the bottom line is I wouldn't be putting chiastolite in that bowl, so that's never going to happen. But if somebody was in front of my collection and looking at crystals and they were particularly drawn to chiastolite, then I would say that's a very clear message to them that it's time to monitor their boundaries, to make sure that they're keeping their inner circle light and bright. They may need to be reminded that they are protected, that they have a team of guides and guardians that are around them and supporting them. But if you want to be able to access that, you've got to invite them. Okay, so that's the big thing a lot of people don't realize. They're like, well, I've got guides and guardians, but they don't protect me. It's like, well, did you ask them to? Because if you don't ask them, they're not going to. They're not going to intrude. There has to be an invitation there. So I would be encouraging them to invite their guides and guardians to step forward, to have a little ritual that it requires, creating that quiet space and doing a bit of a meditation and just focusing on sending love to them and inviting them to give them, the person I'm referring to give them whatever it is that they need to center and to be able to focus and get back on their divine path. Because the divine path isn't always just about being a servant to God, doing praying and going into the temples or whatever. Being a divine servant actually means walking the path as well, and walking the path physically when we're on earth. We've got a physical body. Creator wants us to be able to live well and not feel deprived, but at the same time be aligned with divine will. So there's a level of reverence and devotion with chiastolite, and I would be reminding them of that. And I would be reminding them that the whole point of chiastolite presenting to them and then being drawn to it is it's time for a new beginning. It's time for a rebirth. It's time to let go of all the old stuff that keeps you bogged down and embrace the new stuff and move forward in your life. So when it comes to chiastolite and caring for it, I'm going to a bit of a deviation from my normal with this one, okay? And this is because there's so many different types of chiastolite and the way it forms. I think if you were going to clean it, you would need to take a great deal of caution with things like exposing it to water. Just test it maybe. I wouldn't be leaving it soak simply because, this is even if it was a polished gem, because I just don't know how the chiastolite would react to a soak, and whether or not it would react even to chemicals. So I guess the idea is if it's a bit dusty or whatever, rinse it under running water, avoid prolonged soaking, definitely don't pop it into salt water, that might damage it. We're just talking about cleaning here. Look, if it's in a setting, as always, I say go carefully, use some very mild soapy tepid water. But if it's the first time you're washing it, and I've done this in the past as well, I might only leave it for a minute and pull it out and just try and pay attention to any changes that might be happening with the crystal. So just be very careful with that. If you need to use a toothbrush to do the silver setting, make sure it's a gentle one. And if you're in doubt at all, take it to a jeweler and get them to take the crystal out and to clean the setting separately to the crystal. Always avoid using harsh chemicals. I don't think I would be game to use an ultrasonic cleaner. And then once you've gone through the cleaning process, remember storing it. You need to keep it separate from your other gemstones. You don't want it to become scratched. And apparently, chiastolite, unless I'm wrong about this, can be damaged by extreme heat. Now, of course, that's the cleaning part. If you're anything like me, once you've done the cleaning, you want to take a look at how to recharge and energize. And that's called energetic cleansing, which is different from the physical. Now, of course, I'm a big one for selenite. If you've got some polished selenite, you can rest it on there and know that it's not going to be damaged. If it's the rough selenite can be hard. I don't know that I would be putting a piece of polished chiastolite onto a rough selenite piece. I would put a bit of fabric in between the crystal, if you like. If you're into smudging and saging, you can do that. Of course, if you're into sound cleansing, you can do that. You can put it in the earth, out of the sunlight. I would say be very careful with sunlight, because it probably will fade. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% with that or convinced of that. And I'm talking about Australian sunlight as well, because it's so harsh here. I've never put it to the test, shall we say. Some things I don't like to test. But certainly it would cope with moonlight. There'd be no issue with moonlight. And I don't know, can you think of anything else? Would there be another way you might do the energetic recharging of your chiastolite if you had some? Oh yeah, you could do energy work. If you're into Reiki and that kind of thing, you can do that. You could also, even if you've got some amethyst, you could actually, especially if it's a small slice, you could pop that onto your amethyst to cleanse as well. That's another way of doing it. So, my friends, that's about all I can share with you today. I'm definitely a bit on the weary side, but having said that, if you've made it this far, thank you very much for being part of my journey. Also, want to acknowledge the fact that my dear little Toby boy has been very quiet throughout this video recording, potentially because he's actually chewed the squeak out of every one of his squeaky toys. I've got some new ones coming. So, yeah, anyway, much gratitude to you all. Have a wonderful day, blessed week, blessed days, blessed year, whatever. Blessings, blessings, blessings. I'll catch you on the next video, okay? Take care. Bye-bye for now.